fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, here to bring you another episode in our Falcons Free Agency 2021 series. We've already taken a look at a lot of offensive groups and safety most recently, along with some other cap and other related stuff for the Falcons. So if you are interested in checking out any of those previous episodes in this series, you can check the show description for links, or you can go to our channel page, The Falcoholic, and there is a playlist for all of our 2021 offseason content, so check that out if you're interested. But today we are going to be taking a look at edge targets for the Falcons, so defensive ends, outside linebackers. We're not entirely sure what Dean Pees' front is going to look like. He's remarked that it will be multiple, so the Falcons probably are going to be looking at just about any type of defensive and edge prospect, as long as they can be a little bit versatile about how they line up. It's also important to note that the Falcons could be going into 2021 with basically nothing at the position, considering that Allen Bailey is maybe the most likely cap casualty, second most likely cap casualty of all. The Falcons saved $4.5 million by cutting him, and we don't know about Dante Fowler's future in Atlanta either, because we all know he's getting paid a ridiculous amount and did basically nothing in 2020. Does Dean Pees think that he can pull off a reclamation project? Because if not, the Falcons could save like $8 million by making him a post-June 1st cut. So if both of those guys were to get cut, Falcons have no one under contract going into 2021. So they're going to need to add players no matter what, but they could really need to add players at that point. So we're going to take a look at some NFL free agents at the edge position. Some of the names on this list are fan favorites, guys that have been brought up. Some other ones maybe you haven't thought of. We're going to take a look at some really pricey guys and maybe some more mid-tier free agents. And then also remark upon some of the Falcons' outstanding free agents and other depth players they might be able to take a look at. So we're going to jump right in to those edge targets for the Falcons in 2021 free agency. So the first name we're going to talk about is a player with a clear connection to new Falcons defensive coordinator Dean Pees. That player is Ravens edge defender Matt Judon, one of the top edge players hitting free agency. Judon's kind of interesting because he's the rare player that was in a contract year that ended up having somewhat of a down year. He missed 2 games with injury, had his lowest sack total since his rookie season. He did still have a pretty good number of pressures, 32 pressures to go along with his 6 sacks, made some plays against the run, 9 tackles for loss as well. But his PFF grade was one of the worst of his career. He graded as a 59.4. That's a below average starter. That has led to like a pretty wide variety of numbers as far as what he might be able to get on the free agent market. For instance, Over the Cap says he's more like a $5 million a year player, which I think we all know he's going to get more than that. Spotrac, on the other hand, says he's worth over $15 million a year, which coming off a season like this seems kind of unlikely also. So he's probably going to sign somewhere between those two numbers. That could be 10, that could be 11, that could be 12. It's probably going to be on the higher end just because of his history of being a very productive and versatile pass rusher. But the connection with Dean Pees makes a lot of sense for why the Falcons might be interested in someone like Judon. Pees knows he can thrive in his scheme. He played several years with Pees in 2016 and 2017. So that connection could give the Falcons a leg up on Judon. But look, Judon's not necessarily an elite level pass rusher. He's not a guy that's really getting you double-digit sacks every year or anything like that, but he's extremely consistent. He's really good at getting pressure, and he does make a lot of plays against the run as well. So Judon could be a guy that maybe you could get a little bit cheaper than usual because he's coming off this down year. And also with the connection with Dean Pees, that could give the Falcons a leg up if the Ravens aren't able to re-sign him. So that's the first one, one that I think fans should pay attention to because I think there's a lot of potential for that Pees-Judon reunion to occur. The second one is one that a lot of fans have brought up. Another top free agent, that is Carl Lawson of the Bengals. Lawson basically had a really slow, he had kind of an interesting career arc, right? Because he had a really good rookie season, then a slow few years, and then started to heat up as he was getting towards free agency. Had a relatively quiet 2020 season if you just look at sack totals, right? He only had 5.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, but he had 44 pressures, which is really, really high. That's a lot of pressures. And PFF graded him out as a 76.3 overall, which is a very good starter. So this was a season that's probably being slept on a little bit. I think Lawson is a better player than these numbers might suggest on their surface. 32 quarterback hits in 2020 and 44 pressures. Those are very high-end numbers. And probably the lack of sacks may have something to do with him being on maybe one of the NFL's worst teams that had basically no offense after Joe Burrow went down, and also just a really bad defense in general. So I think it's possible that Lawson could be a better player on a better team. But it's important to note he's never really been a high-end sack producer. His 44 pressures in 2020 was a bit of an outlier for him. He has been improving basically every season. This was one of his highest PFF grades of his career. And he also shouldn't be like crazy expensive. He's not going to be in that like Trey Hendrickson tier of guys that are looking for 15 plus million. Over the cap, for instance, has Lawson's value at around 11 to 12 million a year, which I think is pretty reasonable for his services. So he's a guy that you're basically looking at being a long-term secondary guy, a complementary rusher to go with a high-end rookie in the future. I don't know if that's going to be this year or next year, but the Falcons are probably going to have to invest a top pick to get that sort of elite pass rusher they need to go alongside Lawson. But he's a little bit of a gamble. He is just 26, so there's a lot of time for him to continue to grow and develop. But I do like his upside. I like his overall play against the run. Again, only a 5.3 missed tackle rate, very reliable tackler there. So I think this is a player that could end up having a stronger future than he has past in Atlanta with someone like Dean Pease. The next name we're going to talk about is a familiar name to all Falcons fans. That would be Justin Houston. Falcons fans have been trying to get Justin Houston in Atlanta for a long time. It makes sense. We've needed an elite pass rusher, and Houston has been one of the NFL's best for a long time. He's not quite in that tier anymore. He is going to be 32 this year, but Houston still had a very quality season as a complimentary rusher for the Colts in 2020. Still put together 8 sacks, 25 pressures, 8 tackles for loss as well. Houston's a guy that can still make plays. He shouldn't be playing, the lion's share of snaps anymore, but as a complimentary guy, an edge 2, perhaps a pass rushing specialist, Houston still has a lot to offer, and that veteran leadership to what is probably going to be an extremely young Falcons rotation on the edge is something that I think would make a lot of sense for the team to add. The big thing with Houston is, how much is he going to be asking for? He was making 9 to 10 million a year in Indianapolis. I don't know that he's worth that type of money anymore. Over the cap values him at about 5 million a year, and I think he'll probably end up getting more than that. But really the question is, does Houston want to play for a contender, or is he willing to go to a team that might be kind of on the upswing like the Falcons? And we don't really know that. That would be up to Fontenot and the rest of the coaching staff to convince him to come here. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he could be a perfect mentor for a young edge group. The price tag's not going to be extravagant. And the Falcons are a team that I think is probably going to be looked at as one of the teams most likely to bounce back. So if Houston's interested in a change of scenery, Atlanta could be a top destination for him. Last name we're going to talk about in detail is one of my free agent crushes. I've been trying to get to Atlanta for a while. Kind of a polarizing player, but that is Markus Golden. Has spent time with both the Giants and Cardinals in 2020. Has had good years with both, kind of bounced back between them. Just a player who brings a lot of nasty, very physical edge rusher, kind of an average athlete, but someone who wins with his bull rush, wins with his strength. Very, very good run defender. Has always kind of been a hot and cold player in terms of pass rush. 2019, he put up 10 sacks. 2020 down to 4.5. He did still have 30 pressures, which is a very healthy number of pressures. 6 tackles for loss along with that, and he had to bounce back and forth between 2 teams. He ended up getting traded back to the Cardinals midway through 2020, which is a little bit weird. But I do like his power and strength, and I like the nastiness he brings to your rotation. But like I said, he has these great years. He had 12.5 sacks in 2016, 10 in 2019, and then in 2015 and 2018 for 2.5. You know, he kind of oscillates back and forth, and that probably has more to do with the surrounding talent than people would want to admit. But Golden's not a guy that's ever going to be like a really, really high-end pass rusher and shouldn't be relied upon to be that. But I think he's an ideal third edge. I think he's a guy that can play second edge in spurts and probably could fill that role for the Falcons in 2021 while they're still kind of filling out this edge group with new faces. But, you know, he's not going to be exorbitantly expensive. OTC, I think, values him at around $6 million a year. He'll be 30 in 2021, so he's not someone you're necessarily looking to sign for like a really long deal, but 2 to 3 years could make sense. And I think he's a gamble worth taking for a Falcons team that just really needs quality contributors. He can rush standing up with his hand in the dirt. He's got a lot of versatility. So I like Golden as a potential mid-level free agent addition to help round out this Falcons edge group. So there are a couple other players we should touch on, some more depth level names to keep an eye on, some more former Ravens. Tyus Bowser, I think, is really interesting. Not someone who played a starting role really for the Ravens, but graded out quite well according to PFF. Surprisingly good coverage player for an edge defender. He offers some versatility. He can rush, he can play the run, and like I said, he offers a little bit of coverage as well. So that's someone the Falcons could definitely look to as a cheap signing to bolster their depth there. Another veteran guy would be Pernell McPhee. You know, spent a lot of time with Dean Pease in the past. You know, won a Super Bowl with him. McPhee has basically been a complementary player throughout his career. He could continue to do that in Atlanta, could again provide that veteran leadership and experience that the team doesn't really have right now at edge. There's also a few Falcons free agents to touch on. Steven Means and Charles Harris. Both are like quality depth rotational guys. They shouldn't be starting like they were forced to do in 2020, but I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them or both returned to the team on cheap deals. And it's also important to note that Jacob Tuati-Mariner is an exclusive rights free agent for the Falcons. He will almost certainly be back. He was one of the most exciting players the Falcons had in 2020 at edge, someone who's really developed for them. I would be shocked if he's not back, because that ERFA designation means that he basically has to accept a veteran minimum contract from the Falcons, and I do think that he will be back. So there you go, guys. Some free agent edge rushers for the Falcons to look at. A lot of names to digest, but I think out of this group, I think the Falcons will probably end up signing at least one or two of these guys, and then we'll see if they go after any of these high-priced free agents. That probably depends more upon where they elect to prioritize their resources, whether that's safety, whether that's offensive line, or what have you. But they don't have a ton of resources, but I think it's possible we could see at least one of these mid-level guys join the team in free agency this year. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this most recent episode of our free agency series looking at edge. We'll be back later this week with another look at some more defensive players. We're going to be taking a look at defensive tackle next for the Falcons, so stay tuned for that later in the week. If you haven't already, please do like the show and subscribe. We really do appreciate that if you're enjoying it. And if you want to help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Falcoholiclive. You can help keep the channel ad-free because we all hate ads, folks. You could get input on our future video content that's going to be coming out over the off-season and regular season, and also get access to our exclusive patron Q&A sessions. We do one of those a month. Those are a lot of fun as well, so you're not going to want to miss out on that. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. You can follow the show at Falcoholic Live as well. Be sure to check out thefalcoholic.com for all of our tremendous written content by our really great staff, and join us on Wednesday nights at 8:10 p.m. Eastern for our live streamed show. That's a lot of fun. We answer a lot of viewer questions. We get into a lot of stuff, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live. Have a great day.